Vandervort, senior writer for Clemson Insider. Will, we appreciate you coming on. How are you today?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you doing?
We're doing great.
Will, I got a personal question to ask you first.
Go ahead, Paulie.
Okay.
I'm going down to Clemson this weekend. I got a dog, and I asked one of my coworkers to watch my dog for me and offered him $50 for 2 days. Is that not enough money?
$50 for 2 days. No, I would probably go a little bit more. I generally, when I go out of town and get somebody to watch my dogs, I generally will give them like $100 or $150, depending on how long I'm gone. If it's 3 days, I'll give them about, $150 or so.
All right, I'm cheap. I'll have to up it.
We said the same thing, Will. We told him $100. He was giving us pushback. We said a minimum of $100. He was giving us pushback. So, all right, thanks for chiming in on that. Let's start with Dabo's press conference yesterday, if we could. Lengthy. It went almost an hour, right? I mean, and a lot was covered in there. Specifically, he's talking about, listen, if people aren't happy with me, we won 8 conference titles in 10 years. I'll go coach somewhere else. What did you make of his frustration yesterday? What did you make of that press conference in general?
Well, first of all, let's start off. Every week, Dabo Swinney goes about an hour. It doesn't matter if they're playing Syracuse or Sisters of the Poor. He goes about an hour every week, which we do not mind at all in the Clemson media because you get a lot of content that way. Sure. But as far as his rant goes, he's kind of done that before. A couple years ago, he did it with the Tyler from Spartanburg incident occurred, and Dabo, the rant yesterday wasn't as bad as that rant. But he likes to just kind of remind people that, hey, look, I am 55 years old. I'm the same age Nick Saban was when he started coaching at Alabama. And I've already won you 2 national championships. I'm way younger. So if you don't like what I've done, I can go somewhere else. And I'm going to go. In other words, he's saying, if I ever leave Clemson, I'm not leaving Clemson and retiring and going and getting on my lake. And he's like, I'm 55 years old. I still got some good years left in me. I want to go coach more. So you either like my way of doing things or I'll just go somewhere else. It's kind of what his message was. Not that I don't think Dabo is going to go anywhere, but I don't think he is. I think he's just letting Clemson people know, hey, look, you guys have had it really good for so long. I trust what I'm doing. I've done this before. And he even said before that long rant, he started off by saying, look, I've won you 2 national championships before. I'm going to win you some more. We're going to win. He said the program is, he says, we're going to win some more. He's like, I told you in 2008 when I got this job that we were going to win a national championship at Clemson. He's like, you guys laughed at me. You thought I was crazy. And he says, what did we do? We went and won 2 national championships. He could have won it a couple more times, he said. So he's like saying basically just trust what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing, and so that's kind of what his message was yesterday. At least that's how I took it.
All right, and so with that in mind, what is the reaction from the fan base when he kind of goes off like this and reminds everyone, like, okay, I delivered, I will deliver again? Does the fan base kind of roll their eyes, or, is there still a strong portion of the fan base that's very much behind him?
It's about half and half. I think there is that side that really supports him, and Dabo can do no wrong, and they will follow behind Dabo. And then there's the other half, which is, they're frustrated, and they want him to hear their frustration. They don't want to hear they're 2 plays away. They know that. They're basically saying, we see that with our own eyes. They want to know how you're fixing it, And so that's kind of where they're at. So they just want Dabo to know they're frustrated. And I get that. I had some fans on my podcast last night I was doing, and they were talking about, hey, Will, is it wrong for me to feel frustrated that they're not getting those 2 plays, that this was a team we told was going to play for a national championship possibility, and they haven't done anything? Am I wrong for feeling that way? And, of course, I told them no. You have every right to feel that way, and I think that's where some of the fans, their opinions lie right now.
All right, let's talk about the offense because that's been a big storyline down there, right? You come in with Cade Klubnik being a Heisman hopeful and maybe one of the Heisman favorites. He has not looked like it. The offense has not looked like it. What is the problem on that side of the ball? What has been the problem through 3 games?
Oh, man. Let's start off with Cade Klubnik. First of all, he's digressed, it looks like to me. He's not seeing the field the way he was at the end of last year. He's not, he's locked in on one guy most of the time, and that's Bryant Wesco, who, by the way, is a really good player, so I get it. But he's not trusting his offensive line, and I understand that because the offensive line they've actually played bad too. Now, part of that's because they've had 3 injuries, and that hasn't helped. So there's some, I understand why there's certain things happening, but it all starts with the quarterback. You got wide receivers who are not running the right routes or not running the routes crisp enough in their route trees. A lot of things that you didn't expect would happen from the offensive side of the ball have happened. And then also I question a little bit of Garrett Riley's play calling, to be honest with you. Now, that could be because, and to his defense, playing devil's advocate, it could be because the way the guys are playing is why he's calling plays that way. So, it kind of all goes hand in hand. The number one thing is they're definitely not playing up to their potential as an offense. It's showing that offense only averaging 19 points a game is ridiculous when you consider where they were last year with basically the same players. Now, Antonio Williams being out, he got hurt on the 5th play of the game against LSU, and so he's basically missed the whole season so far. They're thinking he might be able to come back this week against Syracuse. If he is, then that's going to do wonders, I think, for the Clemson offense because they just don't seem like they are the same offense at all without him in there.
All right, let's go to the other side of the ball now. How do you feel about new defensive coordinator Tom Allen, the work that he's done, and I guess what stands out to you about the play of the defense so far?
Well, I think overall they've done a pretty good job. They've gotten better at stopping the run. They held Georgia Tech last week 120-something yards. 124 yards below their season average last week. And I know people made a lot of big deal about Haynes King and what he was able to do late in that game. But for the majority of that game, their running game didn't do anything against Clemson. And you feel good there. I think the tackling is much improved for Tom Allen. And they're making teams have to earn it. So you look at Clemson only giving up 19 points a game in the 3 games, and really 2 touchdowns are on the coaches for not getting a call in time that will set up the touchdown for Georgia Tech this past week, their first one. And then the week before against Troy, they had the wrong player on the field. And they had a linebacker trying to cover a wide receiver. That ain't never going to work right. So that's on the coaches. And so, so you look at it, and then the offense has given up 1 direct touchdown on a batted ball that was returned for an interception, and then they gave up the field goal this past week on the turnover. So overall, I think the defense has played well. However, with that said, the main problem they have is getting off the field. Right now, Clemson is very poor on 3rd down and on defense, and that's something they got to get better. They've only had 4 3-and-outs this entire season so far. So they got to get off the field, and I think that's one reason why the offense hasn't been able to get in any rhythm. It's because they're only getting like 57 plays, and that's because the defense has been getting off the field and getting the ball back in the hands of the offense.
We've talked a lot about on this show this week about the mindset going into this game for both these teams. Syracuse is a 17.5-point underdog. Are they going to have a chip on their shoulder? Clemson is obviously coming off the tough loss to Georgia Tech. They're 1-2. Are they going to have a hangover off that conference loss, or are they going to be laser focused? Like, let's get back on track. So from a Clemson perspective, how do you see them coming out in this game? Do you think it's going to be, their best performance of the season and they're going to look like the Clemson everybody was expecting? Or do you still have your doubts about, how good this team maybe is right now?
Oh, I still got my doubts. And by the way, if you're a betting person, I'd take Syracuse all day to cover that 17. 17.5, I believe, is the line.
Yeah.
I'd take Syracuse on that all day. Because Clemson hasn't showed me anything to go against that. I mean, offensively, as we just talked about their struggles. Defensively, they can't get off the field. So they're going to play a high-flying Syracuse offense. They're playing with a lot of confidence. They can move the football. I mean, they went up and down the field against Tennessee all day in that season opener. So they know what they can do offensively, and Clemson doesn't know what it can do offensively. And I think that is the concerning part. I do think Clemson's defense will get some stops and will do what they're supposed to do. But will the offense be able to get out of this funk that it's in? Until I see it, I'm not going to say they're going to, because I've seen 3 weeks now where they've started every game really slow and haven't got anything going. And it didn't matter if they were playing LSU or if they're playing Troy, they couldn't get going. And Georgia Tech was a game I thought last week. That's not a great Georgia Tech defense. There's advantages Clemson clearly had against them, and they didn't really take advantage of it early on. And it took them almost a half before they finally got going offensively. they can't do that this week, or they'll be down 3 touchdowns to Syracuse. So that's what I think is the number one concern for Clemson going into this week.
You talk about Syracuse. I'm curious to get your thoughts, from the outside looking in on Fran Brown, the job he's done here through a year and a half, and on this Syracuse team in general. Steve Angeli right now leading the country in passing yards. Now, I don't know that he's going to be able to keep that up necessarily, and they did just play an FCS opponent. But to your point, they've been able to move the ball. What else stands out to you about this Syracuse team from what you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Coach Brown does a great job, and he gets a lot out of his guys, and you can see that, and he demands respect from them. Reminds me a lot of the guy Clemson just played in Brent Key down at Georgia Tech, right? I think the players play through the personality of their coach, which means they're going to come in here and play hard, and they're going to do everything they can to walk out of Death Valley with a win for the first time in their program's history, And so, look, Clemson's got to be ready to play in this game because I think, that offense, as you mentioned with Angeli, is going to cause some problems. They're going to go up-tempo. They're going to be moving fast, probably the fastest offense Clemson's seen to this point. I think they're going to do what everybody else has done against Clemson, and that's really negate that defensive line by going with the short passing game and getting their players out in space and just taking what the defense gives them. So that's going to be a challenge. Now, can Clemson do some things on their defense because they're not very good on defense? Syracuse isn't right now. Can Clemson take advantage of that? Well, they should, but they should have taken advantage of that against Troy, and they should have taken advantage of that against against Georgia Tech last week, and they haven't. So why am I going to believe all of a sudden Clemson's offense is going to find its way against Syracuse this week? I don't think that's going to happen. So I think it's going to be a really tough, hard-fought football game, and I'll be honest with you guys. I think that Syracuse is going to pull the upset off. I really do.
Interesting you should say that. That was going to be my last question. I could tell that you're, concerned about Clemson in this matchup. So Will, give me your prediction. How do you think Saturday plays itself out?
Yeah, I think it's going to be just like what we just saw out of Clemson and Atlanta. It's going to be a tough game. I don't think Clemson's going to play well until I see it from an offensive standpoint. I think they're going to have their issues, it's a bunch of things, right? It's not just one thing. It's not just Cade Klubnik. It's not just the offensive line. It's not just the wide receivers. It's not just the play calling. It's all of those things. And it's hard to get that fixed, right? That's something that's going to take time to get fixed. And so I think it's going to be a close game. I think Clemson's defense, again, will play well. I think Syracuse offense is going to play well. But I think Syracuse is going to have just enough in their arsenal that they're going to come in here and steal one from Clemson. And I'm going to say Clemson's going to have its first 1-3 start to a season since 2004. I'm going to go Syracuse 27, Clemson 24.
Wow, how about that? And I said that earlier, Paulie. I said it could be first 1 to 27. I think that's the number. I think if Syracuse can get to 27 or 28, they might be able to hold Clemson below that. All right, Will, great insight. I know the SU fans listening certainly like your take on things. We appreciate you checking in, and hopefully we can talk again down the road.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for having me.
All right.